And we'll actually take it back over now. Now, we just actually found out that the U.S. stocks have opened steadily after Trump's big win. And I know a lot of people were shocked about that because we did expect that dip to continue, even though we saw some of the markets rebounding a little bit overnight.
Yeah, the futures were down overnight. We were talking about that, but at least we do know some are back up. The Dow Jones is back up. We are going to check in with Tim Lammers in just a moment. Actually, he is available right now. He's with financial expert Paul Schatz in Studio B. Tim?
Yes, it's been very interesting to watch what the Dow Jones Industrial Average has been doing, not just in the futures overnight, but now that the bell has rung. A lot to try to make sense of, and we're happy to have this morning with us financial expert Paul Schatz back with us from Heritage Capital Investments. Glad to have you here.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you in. I know you came in on short notice, and I am watching the live feed as the Dow seems to be almost completely rebounding, if I am reading this right, now that trading is open for the day. So what sense do we make of what has happened now, with at least starting with the Dow in the last 24 hours?
So as the polls were closing, as returns were being reported, you watch the market go in the overnight session. You watch the market go from up 0.25%, 0.5%, almost a full percent by 7:45, and then literally it just collapsed to down 800. Actually, the market stopped trading overnight for a period of time because it can't go down any more than that.
Yeah.
That's certainly an overreaction. What's happening today is kind of cooler, calmer heads are prevailing.
Yes.
What I thought if Trump won, you would have seen a total 4 to 6% pullback between today and the week of Thanksgiving. I still think that's the case. If we had been down 1,000 on the opening, I couldn't buy fast enough. The fact that the losses have been mitigated, I think we're returning to somewhat of a more normal behavior. We should have another small decline coming between now and Thanksgiving. I think that's the one to buy.
Okay. So, and just to recap here, it went down by about 800 points overnight, the maximum. They cut things off. Right around the time Trump made his victory speech is when things rebounded. Is there correlation? Is there causation? Did that calm people down?
So I don't think and I was up till 4 a.m. and got a couple hours sleep.
You were, yeah.
I don't think that speech, let me tell you, it was a really nice speech. People were worried that he was going to come out with all the venom and vitriol. It was a nice speech. I don't think the markets really care about that kind of rhetoric right now.
Yeah.
Just people were really selling the news, and now they're kind of returning to a sense of normalcy.
Yes.
Companies are still having the same earnings. But really, the world hasn't changed. He still has to work with a Congress. He still has Chuck Schumer as the minority leader who could use the filibuster. We still have checks and balances. He's not going to run amok.
Yes.
I think that was the initial thought.
What is exactly the mechanism behind what's happening? This is not a person we're talking about. It's the collective will of thousands, millions of people. So there's not necessarily politics. Is it that there's uncertainty and markets don't like uncertainty?
Markets love certainty, but more than that, markets love political gridlock. Okay. So if you had one party taking either the presidency or one of the House of Congress, the markets would realize, hey, listen, things are screwed up right now, but the fact that there's a big check there to balance off something else, things can't get even more screwed up. If there was one party that had a little bit of power, at least then you would need true compromise. As I mentioned the other day, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton in the mid-'90s, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill in the '80s. So this is not as bad as if the Democrats had swept the table.
Yeah.
The markets would be in worse shape.
Okay.
And this is not my political persuasion. It's just that it'd be a complete, utter left-wing agenda, which is not pro-growth. Now you've got Trump wants tax cuts, lower regulation. He wants to spend money on infrastructure. So there are some forgetting about all his other issues and items and arguments, but just on economic reasons, he's got a pro-growth policy that he's going to try to enact, and I'm going to say he'll try to enact it beginning February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
That's pro-market.
Okay. Getting off of the U.S. markets, what's happening overseas? We're hearing a lot of different markets went down. I don't know if they've come up. And then there's the peso in Mexico. Seems to have really taken a hit.
Right. So let's start with overseas. Japan closed first, and the Nikkei was down. That's their big Dow index. The Nikkei was down about 5.5%, but that closed before the market rebounded overnight here.
Okay.
So tomorrow I expect the Japanese markets to be much, much, much higher.
Okay.
As you start to come around the globe from Asia towards Europe, losses were less and less and less. So early on last night, Europe was down 2 to 3%. As we got close to the U.S. opening, the markets in Europe began to lift off the bottom. I expect they'll be on firmer footing later on. I think a lot of things are like that Mark Twain line, rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated.
Yes.
I just think a lot of this is hot air for now. A lot of raw emotion that's going to shake out over the next 10 days.
Okay, and that seems to be a very common theme. When there's volatility, just ride it out if you things are going in a fairly good direction.
Take a deep breath, relax. You still have some wonderful bargains in the market. And a Trump presidency is going to give you good for energy, good for biotech, good for infrastructure, which is industrials. You get a lot of sectors that are going to benefit from a Trump presidency.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
Glad to have you here.
Appreciate it.
There's certainly a lot to talk about. So maybe we'll have you back on again once things have stabilized out a little bit. Now, we're going to have a look at weather when we come back. At least that's one thing that certainly has not been changing all that much. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So stay with us for that.